This is the mugpunters.com.au podcast for the 10th of November 2016. And coming up in this week's episode, America wakes up, rolls over, takes a look at who they went to bed with last night and collectively chomp on morning after pills like tic-tacs in the hope it was all just an awkward prank gone wrong. Some crack emerges behind the scenes at premiership winning Cronulla Sharks as Ben Barba proves he really is rocks or diamonds. And we get our punch on in New York, but unfortunately not with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton for the first ever UFC event to be held at the famed Madison Square Garden. Plus Four Nations Rugby League, the huge summer of cricket, Formula One, horse racing, and much, much more.
And now, the sports show that pulls no punches in telling you how it is. No holds barred, no beg your pardons. It's the mugpunters.com.au podcast. The Mug Punters.
Mug Punters, yes! It's PK here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome along to the Mug Punters podcast. Remember, if you've got something you want us to cover on the show, tweet us or comment on an episode on Facebook. And if you haven't already, hit that massive subscribe button on the website. My name is PK, and as always, I'm joined by the delightful Barts. Sir, are you there?
Hello, mate. How are you?
Absolutely outstanding. I'm more fired up than a Secret Service agent at a Donald Trump rally at a Mexican women's refuge.
Women's refuge, nice. Well, there's mixed emotions, my friend, this week. I should be happier than a kitten under a leaky cow with test match cricket back, and it's real cricket, but just like our one-day team did in South Africa in that 5-blot punish last month, we are bending over and taking the South Africa's full stump in the long form as well. It's hard to watch. It was only a week ago we had that amazing news that James Brayshaw won't be part of the Nine commentary team this year. But just like South Africa opting for the cock at keeper, the Nine team have gone with two cocks of their own in Peterson and Michael Clark this summer. What were they thinking?
I think you are fired up, my friend.
Oh.
Well,
it's unbelievable. I just can't believe what they've done. Kevin Peterson, come on.
Well, let's move on and introduce our other full-time member of the panel. Get him in on this. Mr. Mills, welcome.
Good morning, boys. And look, KP, he goes all right, doesn't he? I didn't really have that much of a problem with him, but the first thing my father told me, actually, when we spoke about that debacle that was that first test, was how annoying he found Kevin Peterson in the commentary box. So, yeah, perhaps some truth to what Bart says.
I don't actually mind him in the commentary box, but here's my point. He sounds South African, he's clearly supporting South Africa, and yet he played for the English cricket team. Does he think he's Greg Inglis or something?
Exactly right.
Oh dear, boys. Anyway, we should just jump straight into it this week.
How did our last tips go?
Do it.
How did our last tips go is a very good question. Let's kick off. Mr. Mills, I actually believe I have a little bit of audio to find out how your last tips went. Do you want me to play that for the listeners?
All right, let's get it over with.
All right.
Al Mandin. Now, this is a former European horse, and get this, 4 starts ago, scored in a group race in Germany, beating the subsequent Melbourne Cup winner Protectionist. Al Mandin was the horse that we managed to get home at $5.50 last week. This boy has hit form at the right time.
17 is Al Mandin.
Possibly the best weighted horse in the cup for me, boys, 52 kilos. But I wasn't entirely stoked when he came up with gate 17.
Okay, Mr. Mills, you have some explaining to do. What is going on?
I do. Well, Al Mandin was good to us early in the spring, wasn't he? And then on the back of one huge run by one oceanographer, I jumped off and backed that one instead. It's ran
ship.
Well, yeah, it's ran pretty ordinary in the end, and of course, history now tells us that Al Mandin's, got clear late for an impressive Melbourne Cup win, so can't do much about it.
Time to pop you in the cryogenic freezer for next year's Spring Carnival, Mr. Mills. Let's never talk about this year again. Barts, what about your last tips? How did you go in the Cup?
Well, terribly, but Mr. Mills and I did hit 25% of the Cup trifecta, which is something.
That is something.
But in saying that, yeah, the Spring Carnival still rate me, boys. I'm happy to see the back of Pony Club, to be honest. I had a bet on South Africa in the first test, though, and I took one zip South Africa series win at $23, as unpatriotic as that is. So we'll see how that plays out. I did put a NFL multi on as well for the Fanatics Facebook group, so shout out to those blokes, and there's a link to that under this podcast. But yeah, that was the Chiefs, Saints, and Cowboys that got home at 275. So back in the sports betting groove, and looking forward to some punts this week. Now I did see the bloke. That bloke won $250,000 with his $10 first four bet on the Cup. So I'm wondering if he listened to our Cup preview, or do you think that's a bit of a stretch?
No, I think he'd probably be a huge fan, because between us we actually did come up with a trifecta, boys. But I say we did come up with a trifecta between us, but also between us we came up with this. And here's a little extract from the show if you missed it.
The 17 is Almandan. It's like the single girl or guy that you see in the nightclub at 3 a.m. You think to yourself, it wouldn't be the worst choice. But come on, seriously, if you've got the pick of the mounting yard early in the evening, is that where you would have thrown your saddle? That's my question. Number 13, Heartbreak City.
He won 2 hurdle races. I'm just not convinced that's the sort of form we want to see coming into a Melbourne Cup. And unless a few race goers get a bit over-exuberant and jump the fence and lie down in front of the field, I'm going to rule him out.
Number 6, Hartnell.
Form suggests that he should be right there, so I don't think he'll win.
boys, that's our trifecta. But we've got some explaining to do.
Oh, we were all over it. We were all over it, It's just... That's spring racing for you, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Okay, we should move on and get into this week in sport. And I tell you, well, actually, before we get into this week in sport, this week in punting, this should be called, because someone left a pot of hot water on the stove and headed out for a deck of smokes in the US, because there was quite the boil over in that US election, I think we'll agree, yesterday. But you tracked the betting during the day. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, mate, it was crazy. I think it was about around midday our time or something like that Trumpy came into equal favourites in the betting. And then after that, hour by hour or minute by minute, up until about 3 o'clock, it went, $1.50, $1.40, $1.30. And then we were playing around the $1.09 mark. It ended up at $1.04 an hour before they called the results. So pretty crazy. It was unbelievable to watch, really.
Well, I mean, we touched on this in a previous podcast, and I mentioned that you could have had any odds you wanted about Donald Trump being president of the United States just 18 months ago, Mr. Mills. Here he is now, President Trump. Does that have a nice ring to it?
Not really, Pete. No, I'm terrified, actually. But look, it's not something that I followed closely, to be honest. But I did find this quote, which I thought was pretty relevant. So just bear with me one moment. We're in such a good headspace now and have added another 2 little girls to the crew. We're flying at the moment, and every day I'm so thankful. I've learned from my mistakes and my family is happy. That's allowed me to enjoy myself again. Oh, wait, no, sorry, boys. That was a quote from Ben Barba 4 days before the grand final, not Donald Trump. But I think you get the picture.
Okay, we will get on to Ben Barba in a second, Mr. Bartovsky, but I tell you, Trump, there's actually some election specials, some post-election specials that have come up. Barts, do you want to hear some of those?
Oh, I do, mate. I actually want to see if there's odds about Hillary going to jail, because I think that's a chance. And before we do that, the funniest part I found about the whole election is the Canadian immigration website shut down an hour before they called the results. So just max exodus. And, I don't know if there's been a bigger upset than the time you outfished both me and Mills at Hawk's Nest that time.
Look, that wasn't an upset. That was meant to be. So if that's what you're saying, that's what you're saying. Hey, speaking of which,
so what do you got?
Hillary Clinton to be arrested before 2020. I can give you $8.50 about that right now.
I was hoping for at least $20, but I might take it.
Okay, we've also got Trump to be re-elected in 2020 is as short as $1.25 with some bookmakers. If you're keen on backing him to successfully build the wall along the entire Mexican border by 2020, that's as short as $4. To be impeached in his first term, $8 I think is pretty generous. For the first commercial flight to Mars during Trump's presidency, you can get $40. And Trump to turn the White House gold, you can get 66s, Mr. Mills.
66, come on.
I think all those options being kept safe just is a bit of a precursor to what we can expect over the next 4 years.
Oh, I can't believe the wall is that short. I had a look. The border is like nearly 4,000 kilometres. It's the length of the east coast of Australia. Come on, there's no way that's happening.
Well, it's not like throwing up a retaining wall in the backyard of your new place up there at Whoop Whoop Barts.
That's it, $4. Oh, it's too short. Sure.
Okay, let's move on. Rugby league. We are back into sport. The Sharks embroiled in controversy as Tyrone Biggums was sacked as one of the trainers at the club's Barts.
Absolutely hilarious. You know what? I don't care if players use recreational drugs, to be honest.
Agree.
But surely you just don't get to head to Thailand for amazing Tom Yum Goong and 600 baht R&Ts under the guise of rehab. Come on.
Mr. Mills, what are your thoughts on this?
The question that I've got, boys, and this is, a little bit serious, but was Barba, and I don't know Malik that well, but was Barba supposed to feature in any of these post-season rep games at all?
No, he didn't make the cut.
So is it unfair then that 4 days after, or 4 days into, I suppose, the biggest celebration that you're probably ever going to have in your sporting life, you get tested and return a positive?
I think if anyone thinks that Ben Barba is the only NRL player who takes recreational drugs, they're as delusional as someone from the real Melbourne Housewives thinking they have sex appeal. But there's no chance that this is a standalone incident.
Oh, of course not, mate. I just think the other blokes are smart enough to go, you know what, we've got to go through our due diligence for a few days after the grand final, then we'll jump on a plane and head to Vegas, and good luck for a tester to be following us over there, and they can do whatever they want, but couldn't help himself.
Couple of sleigh rides for Benny Barba, and away he goes. Four Nations time. We do still have rugby league going on at the moment. My question is this, first of all, Barts. Does anyone give a stuff?
Oh, I don't know if they do or don't. I have caught a few of the games. Australia are looking pretty strong out there, I have to say. I think they're actually underpriced in the betting, and I don't think there's anyone in doubt that it'll be an Australia-New Zealand final. I'd be interested to see what you guys think.
Well, it's enjoyable to switch on the TV on a Sunday morning and get surprised by some rugby league, Mr. Mills.
Oh, is there? I wouldn't know, mate. I've been so flat out. But, I'm just wondering, if it's the Four Nations, why can I not find Scotland in the overall winners market?
Yeah, well, they're already out of the race because they've got to play their pool matches first before you go to the final. They've already lost 2 from 2, so mathematically they are out of the running. But Aussies on top and set to play England this weekend. England are about as desperate as a couple of the young lasses off Next Top Model for a Big Mac, Barts.
I'll take your word for that.
What are you thinking of this weekend's matchup?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. New Zealand and Australia just progress straight through to the grand final, and then we might have a half decent game. But I don't think anyone else offers any challenge really.
Looking ahead to the final, assuming it is New Zealand versus Australia, can the Kiwis upset the Aussies? They came very close last weekend.
They did, but in saying that, I don't really think that score reflected the quality of the match. They rested Cooper Cronk, the Australians, in that game, and it was only the dogged defence from New Zealand that kept them in there. I don't think they're a show, to be honest.
All right. Let's move on. Cricket. We got a huge summer of cricket with a schedule packed tighter than a Rebel Wilson miniskirt. But this is going to be massive.
It's going to be huge, mate, and I thought it was only fitting that we did a community service for the mug punters out there by giving them an opportunity to plan their beer carton purchases and 6-pack allocations well in advance. in what I believe will be a difficult summer of cricket to watch as an Aussie supporter. What do you guys think it's going to be like?
Mr. Mills?
It's not looking good, is it? Coming off getting beaten by Sri Lanka of all countries, of all nations, and then, of course, that first test capitulation after, and that would have been interesting too, Bart, to see the betting fluctuations in that. In the first innings, we must have been very short there, and then, of course, just let the game just slide away.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure at some stage we got out to, South Africa got out to like $8 or $9 after we started to blitz them in that first morning of play. But yeah, so it's really interesting. The summer is absolutely packed. We have 3 nations arriving on Australia's shores in some form or fashion over the next 4 months. And then there's an away tour thrown in for good measure. We obviously kicked things off with the WACA test instead of the traditional Brisbane test at the Gabba this year. This is, of course, part of a 3-test series with the second game kicking off in Hobart on Saturday. And finally, Adelaide for the third test, and the first of our day-night, a pink ball test for the summer. Less than a week after the final test, New Zealand arrived for the first of 3 games of a 6-game one-day series, played through early December, and Australia will cross the ditch for the second part of that series late in January and Feb. And then in between that, Pakistan arrived for a 3-test series kicking off with a one-day nighter match at the Gabba, the Boxing Day and New Year's tests at the traditional MCG and SCG homes. And just on those 2 tests, Pakistan are ranked second in the ICC test rankings. They may rip us a new A-hole, I think, unfortunately, with Yasir Shah, their own Shane Warne clone, likely to bamboozle us if there's turn in the SCG strip. So after the Sydney test, we'll play a 5-game ODI series against Pakistan before heading over to NZ for the previously mentioned second part of the ODI series, and finally return home for a 3-game 2020 series, also against Pakistan. That's 41 days of cricket played on home soil and 3 in New Zealand. That's a lot of beer, boys.
Well, Mr. Mills, I don't know about you, but I did not follow a word of that. Thank God this podcast is recorded.
I'm with you, PK, and honestly, I don't really care unless we can somehow get ourselves back in some form in the second test in Hobart, kicking off on Saturday.
Well, do you see them having a chance in that second test, Mr. Mills?
Well, the betting suggests we can see some rain or a very flat wicket. I've not done the research, but the draw there is actually the favoured option at $1.60. Australia, incredibly, second favourite at $4.40. South Africa, the outsiders, at $4.80. I just don't understand that market.
Yeah, it's. I've had a look at that. I was going to say the South Africa at full strength, I'd take them all day and every day on a Friday. But the Saffers have drawn more tests in recent times and missed the squiggle. So there's up to 3 to 4 days of showers predicted and no stain, obviously. So I reckon the draw actually looks overs at $1.61 there. If they get at least a couple of days of rain, $1.61 might be good value. What do you guys think?
I agree, Mr. Mills.
Yeah, happy to come on board then. Bart's done the work there, so we'll follow him in.
All right, you got anything else cricket-wise to chat about this week, Mr. Butts?
No, not really. You guys, anything?
I've got more to come a little bit later in the show, but first of all, we need to move on to Formula One. And we've got 2 races to go. We've got Brazil this weekend and then back to the Middle East for the season decider. I'm still smarting about the fact that the season final is not in Adelaide, but Mr. Mills, Brazil this weekend. Everybody loves a Brazilian. What have you got for us?
That's right. And boys, look, few could argue that this year we're in the year of the underdog, aren't we? Leicester City in the Premier League, the Bulldogs in the AFL, the Sharkies getting up, the Chicago Cubs ending an 108-year World Series baseball drought, and somehow Trump wins the election. Now,
massive.
2 races to go in the Formula One, and Mercedes driver Nico Rosberg has a 19-point lead over teammate Lewis Hamilton, but I'm tipping at the much better odds that Hamilton can contrive a way to win this championship.
Wow.
Now, he is $4.20 with 2 races to go. Basically, that suggests that for the 2 dominant cars, Rosberg needs to come to grief somehow. But in recent races, Rosberg has looked the one most likely to be involved in a first corner bingle. Now let's say Rosberg has a poor to middling race in Brazil and finishes 5th, and Hamilton wins, and that's, by the way,
Sure.
who I'm tipping to win the race.
Sure.
That cuts the margin to 4 points with one race to go. Now with
Yep.
25 awarded for a win and just 18 for a second placing, that means it's all to play for in the final race.
Ooh.
And I'm just thinking that we can have two stabs at this. So at $1.91 we can back a very hungry Hamilton to win in Brazil, and
Seems
just have
like
a little
good odds.
saver at the $4.20 on Hamilton to somehow get the job done and win another drivers' premiership.
Oh, nice.
So maybe you're suggesting to us that back Lewis to win in Brazil, and then the profit we roll into a possibility of him winning the Drivers' Championship.
That's probably the way to go. Even at $4.20, it is an outside hope, but I think that that's probably a point and maybe more than a point over. And yeah, I'd be interested in just having a little bit on that option as well.
Okay. UFC 205. We've got our resident expert, Barts, here. Mills, I know you're fired up for this one. UFC 205. Now, for the UFC, Barts, this is a bigger event than the surprise visit from Wayne Newton to a Floridian nursing home, isn't it?
It sure is, mate. It's a dream come true. It's 205 pay-per-views before they've finally got licensed to fight in New York City, Madison Square Garden. It doesn't get any bigger, and I've watched all 205 of those pay-per-views, and I have to say it's the best card ever assembled. It's unbelievable.
Okay, given that, breaking news. See, I've got breaking UFC news, Mills. Can you believe this?
I love it. I love it.
Rashad Evans is out because of an MRI and undisclosed reasons. Well, I think we know what that's talking about. And there's no plans to replace his fight on the card, Barts.
That's right. Tim Kennedy's been left begging for a fight on this card.
Poor bastard.
But it was the commission that, took him out of this fight over concerns in his medical. I've heard rumours that it's a graft, a broken bone that hasn't healed properly. So, it could be that, or it could be, roid related, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay.
In saying that, though, I don't think it's going to affect the card and put a dent in the amazing card at all. The card's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, Alvarez and McGregor, the headline act. But these blokes are the current champions in two different weight divisions. We've only ever seen this one time before by memory, which would have been George St. Pierre and BJ Penn. Now, first of all, tell me, is my UFC knowledge up to scratch on that?
It's not, but it was a good it was a good attempt. BJ Penn took the title off Matt Hughes by going up to the welterweight division all those years back from lightweight. But this will be the first time in history, if McGregor wins the lightweight belt, that he'll hold two belts consecutively.
Aha, there you go. How do you see the fight going down?
Well, I didn't really want to have a bet on this fight, but I know it's the only fight that casual fans really give a care about. So McGregor's paying $1.60 or $2 to win via KO. So even though that's the likely result, if Alvarez can avoid the left hand, and more importantly Connor's body kick arsenal, which is the key to so many of his victories, by slowing his opponents down, I think he can tie up with Connor, push him against the cage and grind that cardio grappling. I think there's a chance of cutting him up with elbows and possibly taking his neck late in the third or fourth rounds. I'm hedging here, and I'm taking Alvarez by submission round 3 at $24 and via submission round 4 at $26.
Sounds like value, Mr. Mills.
I'm just more interested in cardio grappling. That sounds a bit saucy to me.
But there's loads of other big fights on the cards. Where is your cash flowing?
Yes, I'm going to have bets on nearly every fight, but instead of boring everyone with the details, I'll put them out on Twitter on the day of the fight. So if you jump onto Twitter at Punters pod, and you can follow the tips there. But my other tip is Natal versus Bosch on the prelims. They're both vets of the game, but Bosch is fairly slow and quite one-dimensional. And his one chance to win the fight for mine is to land a big shot to put Natal away. Natal should game plan to stay busier in the judges' eyes. If he plays it smart, I think he wins via decision. And he's paying $3 60. So I think that looks juicy. Get on.
And that fight, Bart, I mean, I just think it's amazing that instead of making his return on the tennis court in December, Rafael Nadal is stepping into the octagon. It's magnificent.
Outstanding work, Mills. I love it.
The Mug Punters tip of the week.
Let's bring some sense back to this, please, boys. Hang on. Tip of the week's not going to do it.
Rafael Nadal.
Come on.
I love it.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. Okay, tip of the week time. Let's kick it off. Barts, why don't you give it a crack? What do you got for us this week?
Well, I'm heading back to the Rugby Four Nations, or more realistically, the Three Nations, as Mills mentioned, and the Scots, who I believe are just there to try to nab JT's headgear at halftime and an autograph. So I'm looking to redeem my eligibility as an Oz sports fan after backing against us in the cricket. As you mentioned, Pete, 14-8 in that last encounter with New Zealand, but the Sheep Shaggers, their ability to stay in the contest was amazing. We talked about Cronk being out. I think the Aussies at $1.40 to win the tournament is overs. I think if it wasn't for NZ spoiling the party for us in big games in the past, we would be much shorter in the betting. And the Kiwis without Foreign and Tuivasa-Sheck are not the same team. So that's Australia, Four Nations winner at $1.40. Straight in all my multis and my tip of the week.
Fair enough for Mr. Mills.
Yep, so we're going to the GGs, boys. Sandown hosts a 10-race card tomorrow. Pretty much the consolation stakes for anything not quite good enough to measure up over the main portion of the Spring Carnival. And in race 9, the Eclipse Stakes over 1,800 metres, I found one at double figures here in number 12, High Church. Now, trained by Darren Weir, which in itself is enough for most people to stand up and take notice. But what a lot of punters will not realise is that it's only been with the Weir camp for one start, where he ran home strongly on an unsuitably tight Mornington track to finish 4th. That was his first up run. Second up, stepping out to the 1,800 metres on the very long run-in at Sandown. He looks awfully hard to hold out for me, especially down there on the minimum with just 54 kilos. And at the moment, trading in some places as high as $11 and $12. I think we can load up each way and expect to get at least some sort of result. That's Sandown on Saturday, race 9, number 12, High Church.
Okay.
Juicy odds. What about you, PK? What do you got?
This week, I'm going to look cricket and Four Nations Rugby League. I'm going to multi it because I didn't want to come up with something under $2, boys. I wanted to come up with a collect better than even money. I think that's a fair call. So we're going to the cricket in Hobart. And as we've already discussed, rain is forecast for the first 2 days. Showers on day 3. It is Hobart, boys. The draw at $1.60, I think that is huge overs unless there is a very generous declaration made by one of the captains, and I just can't see it happening. So $1.60 for the draw into Australia against England in the Four Nations match this weekend, but I'm going to fatten the pot. Rather than just the Aussies to win, I'm going to take the Aussies with the Poms. Sorry, the Aussies at -5.5. I've got to get that right. My God. I tell you.
Okay, 5.5 start. Yep.
So we're going to give the Pommies a 5.5 start, and I'm going to take the Aussies at $1.55 is what I could find for those guys at set your own line. So $1.60 into $1.55, based on my calculations, $2.48, gentlemen, is what we're going to come up with.
The Mug Punters 60-second soapbox.
Okay, soapbox time. Thank God I get to step off the soapbox this week. But stepping into the soapbox position, Barts, it is your turn, and I believe this is going to be a cricketing soapbox.
It is, mate, and I'm not at all angry this week. It's just, I just feel vindicated that a long-standing belief of mine is on the mark, so I'm going to be an arsehole and smugly vent with a personal attack.
But your 60-second soapbox starts now.
Michael Clark, you are a douche. No more benefit of the doubt for this prima donna. It all started back with the Lara Bingle fiasco. This bloke knew she had a few screws loose and the personality of a saucepan. They were engaged, but a bit of controversy over a leaked photo of her with the cans out in the shower at Favola's years before, and Clark thinks he might not get the captaincy and dumps her. What a scumbag. Now, I'm not knocking his ability to bat, But if hitting things with a bat made you a good bloke, Oscar Pistorius would be a national hero. Or if being a great sportsman meant you were a top baller, King Jong-il would be the first invited on a boys' trip. He shot 38 under par in his first ever round of golf and a perfect 310-pin game without bumpers. Incredible athlete. Now, Darren Lehman, Steve Waugh, Shane Watson, Mitchell Johnson and Simon Kadich, who we always put one on his chin in that change room, and you can take that how you wish, have all spoken out publicly against this tool bag in recent times. So I ask, where are all the Clark supporters, gents? No ex-teammates have come out in support of him yet. To me, that paints a very telling picture.
Oh, scathing, Mr. Mills.
Oh, gee, he's really unleashed there. Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all.
Boys, that's it for the week. Barts, thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, PK, and I'll leave you with this. Combining the fairy tale wins of the Cubs in the baseball with Leicester City, Western Bulldogs and the Sharkies in a 4-leg multi with a $1 stake would have returned you $16,575,452. There is hope, boys.
See you next week, Mr. Mills.
Oh, why didn't we take that? Look, there's talk already that Ben Barba might be back with the Sharks in 2017, cutting his contract in half from $700k to $300k. That's got to be the most expensive 8-ball in history, doesn't it?
And as Donald Trump has sex with a supermodel, closes his eyes and thinks of himself, I'm PK. We'll see you next week.
For more information and to download any previous episodes, go to mugpunters.com.au. The Mug Punters.